25th Congress, 2D Session. FITEP, XO, 14, Ho. Of Heps. James J. Pattison. To accompany Bill H.R. number 26, the 14th of December, 1837. Heprintikel the 3rd of March, 1836. Mr. P. C. Fuller, from the Committee of Claims, made the following report. The Committee of Claims. To IVIC was referred the petition of James J. Pattison. Report. The petitioner claims pay for a house and furniture burnt in June, 1814, by a detachment of British troops, in consequence, as is alleged, of the occupancy of the house and premises by the Maryland militia, under the command of Major Taney. The house stood on the Patuxent, near the mouth of St. Leonards Creek, in Calvert County, Maryland. The flotilla of Commodore Barney were anchored in the creek, and threatened by the British commander, Barry, and it was to protect and defend Commodore Barney that the militia, under Major Taney, were called out. Application was early made for compensation for this property. On the 17th of October, 1816, commissioners were appointed by Richard Bland Lee, who acted by authority from the President, under the law of the 9th of April, 1816, which commissioners received and made report of all the testimony then presented, touching the occupancy of the premises by our troops, and its destruction by the enemy. The case was reported to Congress, considered by the Committee of Claims, who made an adverse report, which was committed to a committee of the whole House, considered, and on the 23rd January, 1818, the claim was rejected. Under the Act of 1825, the case appears to have been remanded to the third auditor, who considered the testimony insufficient to justify payment for the property. In a letter to the petitioner dated 3 November, 1825, Hagner informs him that the law required proof that the building, at the time of its destruction, must be, by order of an agent or officer of the government, occupied as a place of deposit for military or naval stores, or as a barrack for the military forces of the United States. He then adds, K. By the testimony in your case, it does not appear that your house was ever so occupied, the witnesses stating only that certain companies were stationed in its vicinity, and that provisions and rations were either issued from and cooked at the house, or furnished by you. And, with respect to these provisions, the transaction is not represented to have taken place at the time, or even on the day of the destruction, or by the order of any agent or officer of the United States. Thomas Allen, Print. 2. Representative No. 14. J. The deficiency of testimony here referred to by the auditor, the committee think is substantially, if not literally, supplied by witnesses subsequently examined. William Hooper, on the 14th of October, 1833, swears that he was a dragoon in Captain Mark Alf's troop of horse, and was ordered, in June, 1814, near the mouth of St. Leonard's Creek, in Calvert County, Maryland. When the troop arrived in camp, the witness says they found no provisions, and they were ordered by Colonel Taney to make the petitioner Pattison's house their quarters, and to go without delay to said quarters, and when they arrived there, they found a detachment engaged in providing provisions for the regiment from the farm of said Pattison. Said troop fed their horses in the stables and yard of Pattison's premises, and used and occupied the house every day, until the house was burnt by the enemy. They used corn, straw, and provisions of every kind during each day they remained there being no other house near where they could be supplied. The troop was often paraded, in the yard, in full equipage, the house being every day visited by the officers of the encampment, and see Captain Horace Fuller swears, on the 2 January, 1833, that he was present, on a visit, at the house of the petitioner in the summer of 1814, that whilst there, he saw the American troops, which were stationed near the dwelling house of said Pattison to defend the flotilla commanded by Commodore Barney, daily visit his house and farm, and procure sheep, bread, stuffs, salt, and other necessaries for the subsistence of the said troops, the sheep being killed in the yard, and hung up in trees growing thereon, and cooked in the kitchen. He further saw corn, fodder, hay, arid straw, taken for the cavalry, which were also stationed near his house, some of the troops occupying the dwelling during every hour in the day. The enemy were in sight and in full view during all the time, and could see what was going on, and the American sentinels were stationed near said dwelling house, and he, the deponent, stated at the time to the troops that he believed the enemy would destroy the house in consequence of their occupation, which he firmly believes was the cause. This witness states that the family of Mr. Pattison left the house some days before its destruction, but that he remained there, and was in sight at the burning, and that the occupancy of the troops was continued up to that time. The petitioner was, at the time, on duty as commandant of a company of the troops. The magistrate certifies that the deponent, Fuller, is a respectable citizen of Baltimore. A witness, John Broom, deposes that the major of the regiment, Johns, is dead, and that Colonel Taney has been many years out of the state. He is understood, by the committee, to be in Texas. The facts here set forth, taken in connection with the testimony of Richard S. Parran and Joseph Reynolds, who were then prisoners on board different vessels of the British squadron, and both testify to the declarations of the English officers, that Pattison's house was burnt on account of its being a military stand, and occupied by the militia, and, taken in connection with the testimony of several other persons examined by the commissioners appointed in 1816, and since that time, leave upon the minds of the committee no reasonable doubt that this application comes within the rules prescribing relief. The value of the property destroyed appears to have been differently representative kilogram 14.3 estimated at different periods and by different persons. In a paper attached to the report of the commissioners, in December, 1816, purporting to be a statement of James J. Pattison's claim, and signed by him, the house is estimated at $5,000, and the furniture burnt and destroyed at $300. A witness, George Stone, examined by those commissioners, and who represents himself as well acquainted with the property, both before and after the burning, says the house, at the time of its destruction, was, in his opinion, worth $5,000 and that the materials remaining were worth $800 leaving the value of the property destroyed, $4,200 besides the furniture, which the committee do not consider, under the decisions heretofore made and adopted by Congress, a fair charge to the United States. The committee adopt this estimate, and report a bill for that amount.